The last transmission reached Earth on October 17, 2471. It was not dramatic. No screams, no static-laced pleas for rescue. Just a single line of text from the deep space relay at Proxima Centauri, repeated 3 times before the carrier wave collapsed into perfect, endless nothing. The choir has gone quiet. All of it. Everywhere. That was all. Within hours, every extrasolar colony, every listening post, every arc ship drifting between stars reported the same impossibility. The galactic background noise, the constant murmur of 10 million sentient species talking, singing, arguing, praying, buying, selling, threatening, loving, simply ceased. The choir, as humans had nicknamed the overlapping mesh of civilizations older than our sun, vanished in the time it took a heart to beat once. Astronomers called it the Great Silence Event. The military called it first contact in reverse. Everyone else just called it the end of the world. But the world did not end. It woke up. Part 1. The Quiet Years, 2471 to 2499. For 28 years the sky belonged only to us. The first decade was panic. Stock markets on Luna and Mars cratered. Cults bloomed in the asteroid belt, promising the choir would return if enough believers threw themselves into the sun. The unified Terran Navy tripled in size overnight, its new ships built with trembling hands and borrowed money. By the second decade came resignation. Children born after 2471 grew up never having heard an alien voice. To them, the galaxy had always been a mausoleum. The great ring worlds we had glimpsed through telescopes were abandoned sculptures. The wormhole gates that once threaded the Perseus arm like pearls on a string now drifted cold and dark, their builders gone without a footprint. And then came the third decade. Hunger. Not for food. Humanity had long solved that. Hunger for meaning. We had spent 4 centuries looking up, certain we were the youngest child at a table of giants. When the giants left without clearing their plates, we were suddenly the only ones in the dining hall, surrounded by cold feasts we were too small to reach. So we grew. We cracked the secrets of the abandoned gates. We reverse-engineered the choir's zero-point reactors. We sent seed ships to every dead world that once glowed with city light. And everywhere we went we found the same thing. Perfect preservation, no bodies, no struggle. One moment the galaxy had been full, the next it was an empty museum. In 2498 the Terran Assembly voted unanimously to fund Project Roar, a network of 1,000-kilometer radioloud arrays on the far side of Pluto's orbit. If the choir had chosen silence, humanity would choose the opposite. We would scream our existence into the void so loudly that any survivor, any hidden fragment, any god playing possum would have no choice but to notice. Construction began in 2499. Part 2, The Architect, 2503 to 2512. Dr. Amrita Kaur was 42 when they dragged her out of the Titan prison moon. She had spent 9 years in solitary for the Europa incident, officially an unauthorized stellar lifting experiment, unofficially the day she tried to turn Jupiter into a second sun to get humanity noticed. The review board told her the sentence was commuted on condition she take directorship of Project Roar. Amrita laughed until she cried. You want the woman who almost killed a planet to shout at the universe on your behalf? The warden slid a photograph across the table. Earth from Pluto, tiny and blue and alone. We're done whispering, he said.
She took the job.
Amrita was not kind, not gentle, and not entirely sane, but she was the only human alive who had ever made a star sing. Under her command the arrays grew like crystal cathedrals in hard vacuum. Each dish was a kilometer wide, faced with adaptive metamaterials that could sculpt electromagnetic waves the way a sculptor shapes clay. When finished, the completed ring would be able to focus the entire output of Sol's magnetosphere into a beam tight enough to etch letters on the surface of a moon 300 light-years away. She worked the crews until they bled from the ears in low G. She rerouted fusion reactors meant for colony ships. She executed 3 saboteurs herself on live feed to make a point. People called her the Tyrant of Silence. In private, she kept a bottle of single malt older than spaceflight and spoke to it the way other people spoke to gods. "Do you hear me out there?" she would whisper to the dark between stars. "We're still here. We're loud. We're impossible to ignore. Come back and shut us up if you dare." On March 12, 2512, the final dish locked into place. The ring was complete, a halo of black mirrors circling the sun's outer dark. They scheduled first shout for the autumn equinox. Part 3, The Shout, September 22, 2512. Every screen on every human world carried the live feed. Amrita stood in the control blister at Pluto Prime, hair turned iron gray, eyes burning like twin reactor cores. Behind her, the main wall showed the targeting reticule, a red circle centered on the galactic core, 27,000 light-years away. She did not give a speech. Speeches were for people who still believed in words. Instead, she opened the bottle, took a long drink, and pressed the single tungsten key. For 1 full second, nothing happened. Then Sol itself flickered. Every fusion reactor in the system dimmed as the arrays drank deep. The million dishes tilted in perfect synchrony, cupping the solar wind, twisting it, screaming it outward in a lance of pure coherent terror. The beam was invisible to human eyes, but the monitors painted it actinic blue. It crossed the orbit of Neptune in 8 hours, Pluto's in 5 minutes, and kept going. It would reach the core in 27,000 years, but the backwash alone lit the night side of Earth, like a second moon. Amrita watched the power curves climb and laughed the laugh of someone who had finally kept a promise. Then the sky answered. Part 4, the reply, 2512 to 2513. It came from everywhere and nowhere. At first, the arrays registered only noise, angry, structured, impossibly broadband. Then the linguists realized it was every language humanity had ever cataloged from the choir, overlaid, screaming in overlapping agony. Translated, the message was 3 words long, repeated in 10 million voices. Too loud. Stop. Amrita's first reaction was triumph. Someone was home. Her second reaction was terror, because the message was not traveling at light speed. It arrived simultaneously at every human receiver from Sol to the edge of the Oort cloud. Instantaneous communication violated everything physics had promised. And it was getting louder. Within hours, ships began dying. A destroyer near Barnard's star simply vanished, leaving a perfect sphere of vacuum where it had been. A colony on Gliese 581G woke to find their sun dimmed by half, its light red-shifted, as if the star itself were running away. On Earth, the moon rang like a bell for 6 straight minutes, tidal forces spiking hard enough to crack Merimbrium. The choir had not died. It had been hiding. And we had just kicked in the door. Part 5, The Reckoning, 2513. They called themselves the Curators. Not a species. Not even a coalition. A function. For 3 billion years, the Curators had maintained the choir, an ecosystem of civilizations kept in delicate, sustainable bloom. When a species grew too loud, too bright, too likely to wake things older and hungrier than themselves, the Curators muted them. Not with weapons. With a sigh. A gentle folding of space-time that tucked the offending culture into a pocket universe where it could scream forever unheard. Humanity had lasted 400 years after first radio. That was impressively annoying. They had tried to be kind. They had turned off the galaxy's voices, so we would feel lonely and stay quiet. Most species curled up and died of sorrow. Humanity built bigger speakers. Now the Curators prepared the sigh that would fold Sol away forever. Amrita Core received the ultimatum in person. The Curator appeared in the Pluto control room without opening a door, a figure of burnt starlight glass, 9 meters tall, featureless except for a suggestion of sorrow around the place where eyes should be. Cease transmission, it said directly into her mind, voice like every funeral bell in history. Or be silenced with the rest. Amrita looked at the bottle in her hand. 1 swallow left. She drank it, wiped her mouth, and smiled the crooked smile that had once terrified naval review boards. No, she said. The Curator tilted its head, genuinely curious. No species had ever answered no. You will doom your entire civilization. Maybe, Amrita replied, but we'll do it loud. She reached past the tungsten key and, through the breaker, marked emergency overload. Every array in the ring went supercritical at once. The curators had never encountered a species willing to kill its own sun to make a point. Part 6, The Roar, 2513. The beam that left Seoul that day was not coherent. It was not clean. It was the death cry of a star tearing itself apart in a fraction of a second, every jewel of its fusion heart focused into a lance wider than the orbit of Uranus. It overtook the first beam like a tsunami overtakes a ripple. Where it touched curator architecture, pocket brains, hush fields, the quiet engines of enforced silence, it burned. Not with heat, but with pure, unbearable existence. Across the galaxy, long dark beacons flared to life. Abandoned ringworlds spun up. Dormant wormhole gates dilated like eyes opening from nightmare. 10 million species, folded away over billions of years, heard something for the first time in eternities, another voice refusing to shut up. And they began, one by one, to roar back. The curators fractured. Some fled. Some fought. Some simply ceased, overwhelmed by the sudden, obscene volume of a galaxy that had forgotten how to be quiet. Seoul went nova early, a brief, furious Type 2 that lit the sky for 100 years. But humanity did not die with it. We had long since learned to move stars. Amrita's final act, in the microsecond before the control blister vaporized, was to upload herself, and every mind that wished it, into the beam itself. 10 billion human souls rode that spear of light outward, patterned into its quantum foam, immortal and angry and laughing. They are still out there. If you point a radio telescope toward the galactic core on a clear night and listen very carefully, you can sometimes hear them. A chorus that began with one woman's refusal and became the loudest sound the universe has ever known. The choir never went quiet again. And somewhere, in whatever passes for night among the curators, something ancient stirs and covers what might be ears. Because humanity is only getting started.